The conference room felt smaller than usual. Gina stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, her expression carved from ice. Behind her, Marcus from HR shifted uncomfortably, clutching a manila folder like a shield. My colleagues lined the hallway outside, pretending not to stare through the glass walls. "Emily, we know about your 2 jobs," Gina announced, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about? Don't play games with us." She slid a printed screenshot across the table. It showed my LinkedIn profile with a post from Hope Haven Women's Shelter. "Thank you, Emily Parker, for your incredible work with our organization." "That's volunteer work," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I help them on weekends. It's not a second job." Marcus cleared his throat. "Company policy states." "I don't care what it states," I interrupted. "This is a non-profit. I'm not getting paid." Gina's smile was sharp. "The policy doesn't distinguish. You're moonlighting, and that's a termination offense." The words hit like a punch. Around me, the office had gone completely silent. Security escorted me to my desk. Every eye in the open office followed my walk of shame. My hands trembled as I packed my belongings into a cardboard box. Photos of my nieces, my favorite coffee mug, the plant I'd kept alive for 3 years. "I can't believe this is happening," whispered Tamara from the neighboring cubicle. "Don't talk to her," someone hissed. Within minutes, my email access vanished. My Slack status changed to deactivated account. I watched colleagues I'd worked with for 5 years suddenly become strangers. They turned away, buried themselves in their screens, pretended I'd already disappeared. The security guard waited by the elevator, his face apologetic but professional. As the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of Gina watching from her office, arms still crossed, wearing that same cold smile. Outside, the afternoon sun felt too bright. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the building where I'd given everything. The termination letter crinkled in my shaking hands. Violation of company policy regarding outside employment. They never asked what the work actually was. Home, I read the letter again and again. The words blurred together, but one thing became crystal clear. Nobody had actually investigated. They saw the LinkedIn post, made an assumption, and built their entire case on it. Hope Haven wasn't a second job. It was my purpose. Every Saturday for 8 months, I'd volunteered to help women escaping domestic violence. I built their donor database, organized their fundraising campaigns, taught computer skills to women rebuilding their lives. I never hid it. Posted about it proudly. But to Gina, nuance didn't matter. Context didn't matter. The truth didn't matter. I opened my laptop and pulled up my email archives. If they wanted to play this game, I needed to understand the rules. More importantly, I needed to understand why this had happened now, so suddenly without warning. The answer came faster than expected. 3 months ago, during the quarterly review, the CEO had praised my client retention strategy in front of the entire executive team. Gina had been standing right there, her smile frozen. That's when everything changed. Before the firing, I was the rising star, the company's golden employee. I joined Pinnacle Logistics 3 years ago as a junior account manager and quickly became indispensable. My client satisfaction scores were the highest in the department. The CEO, Brian Crawford, had personally commended me during 2 separate company meetings. "Emily's approach to client relationships is exactly what we need," he'd said 6 months ago, gesturing toward me in the crowded auditorium. "She doesn't just manage accounts. She builds partnerships." The applause had been genuine. My colleagues had congratulated me afterward. Even Gina had smiled, though looking back, I should have noticed how tight that smile was. Gina had been my mentor once. When I first started, she'd taken me under her wing, sharing industry insights and introducing me to key clients. I'd admired her sharp business sense and her ability to command a room. But something shifted. My ideas started gaining traction. Clients requested me specifically. Brian began asking for my input in strategy meetings. The mentorship quietly ended. The change was subtle at first. Gina stopped copying me on important emails. My invitations to client meetings mysteriously disappeared from my calendar. Projects I'd been leading suddenly had her name attached as the primary contact. During one executive presentation, I watched in disbelief as Gina presented my entire quarterly strategy as her own. She used my slides, my data analysis, my recommendations word for word. When Brian praised her innovative thinking, she accepted the compliment without hesitation. I confronted her afterward in the hallway, my voice low but firm. Those were my ideas, my research. You didn't even mention my name. Gina's expression remained pleasant, but her eyes were ice. Emily, this is how business works. Your role is to support the department. My role is to represent it to leadership. Don't take it personally. You stole my work. I presented our team's work. There's a difference. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. This is how the game's played, Em. You're either on the board or you're a piece. Choose wisely. I should have seen the warning then. My workload doubled seemingly overnight. Gina assigned me the most difficult clients, the ones with impossible demands and tiny budgets. Projects that had once been shared across the team now landed solely on my desk. I stayed late every night, arrived early every morning, trying to prove I could handle it. You're being set up to fail, warned Kyle, one of my co-workers. Gina did the same thing to Amanda before she quit. I thought I was different. I thought hard work would speak for itself. I was wrong. The exclusion became more blatant. Major client calls happened without me. Strategy meetings were scheduled during my vacation days, then accidentally not rescheduled. My quarterly review, which had always been exemplary, suddenly included vague criticisms about team alignment and communication challenges. I need you fully committed to Pinnacle, Gina said during that review, her tone pointed. No distractions. No divided attention. I am fully committed, I replied, confused by the implication. Are you? She tapped her pen against her notepad. Because I've heard things that suggest otherwise. Looking back, she was already building her case. Planting seeds of doubt. Preparing everyone for the narrative she'd eventually tell. I found Hope Haven during my darkest period at Pinnacle. My best friend Natalie worked there as a counselor and mentioned they desperately needed someone with database management skills. Their donor records were a mess, stored across spreadsheets, paper files, and sticky notes. I know you're busy, Natalie said over coffee, but these women need help. We're doing life-changing work with broken systems. I visited the next Saturday. The shelter occupied a converted house on the quiet side of town, its address kept secret for the residents' safety. Inside, I met women rebuilding their lives from scratch. Some had fled with only the clothes they wore. Others had escaped with children clinging to their hands. The director, Patricia, showed me their database, a collection of Excel files with duplicate entries, missing information, and no backup system. We can't afford a professional consultant, she admitted. Most of our funding goes directly to residents. I'll do it, I said immediately. No charge. Just point me toward a computer. That first Saturday stretched into 8 months of weekends. I built them a proper donor management system, trained volunteers to use it, and helped design their fundraising campaigns. It became my purpose. Around month 6 of my volunteer work, the whispers started at Pinnacle. I'd hear conversations that stopped when I approached. Colleagues exchanged glances when I mentioned weekend plans. The atmosphere in our department shifted from collaborative to suspicious. Kyle pulled me aside one afternoon. His expression worried. Gina's been asking questions about you. Personal stuff. Whether you seem distracted, if you're working on anything outside the office. Why would she care about that? She's building something, Emily. I don't know what, but she's collecting information. I laughed it off. I'm not doing anything wrong. I volunteer at a nonprofit. That's not a crime. Maybe not, Kyle said. But Gina doesn't need crimes. She just needs ammunition. I should have been more careful. Instead, I proudly posted about Hope Haven on LinkedIn. I shared our fundraising successes, thanked the volunteers who made it possible, and expressed genuine joy in making a difference. Every post was documented. Every thank you was screenshot. Every expression of pride became evidence in a case I didn't know was being built against me. The performance review 2 months before my firing was a masterclass in manipulation. Gina scheduled it for late Friday afternoon, when everyone else had left. Marcus from HR sat in the corner, taking notes but saying nothing. "Let's talk about commitment," Gina began, sliding a document across the table. "Your performance has been inconsistent lately." I stared at the review in disbelief. Metrics I'd exceeded were marked as meeting expectations. Clients who'd specifically praised my work were listed under areas for improvement. Projects I'd successfully completed were described as requiring excessive oversight. "This isn't accurate," I said, my voice shaking with controlled anger. "My client retention rate is 94%. My satisfaction scores are the highest in the department. Numbers don't tell the whole story." Gina's smile was sympathetic in a way that felt rehearsed. "I'm concerned about your focus. Your energy seems divided. Are you fully committed to your career here?" The question felt loaded, dangerous. "Of course I am. Because if there are outside interests competing for your attention, that's something we need to discuss." I left that meeting with my first ever needs improvement rating and a sick feeling in my stomach. The trap was closing. I just didn't realize how quickly. 3 weeks later, Marcus called me into HR. The same conference room. The same manila folder. But this time, his expression was apologetic before he even spoke. "Emily, we've received credible information that you're working a second job in violation of company policy." "What information?" He pulled out printed screenshots. My LinkedIn posts about Hope Haven. A thank you card from Patricia that someone had photographed. A comment I'd made in a professional forum about non-profit database management. "This is volunteer work," I explained slowly, as if talking to a child. "I'm not being paid. I help a women's shelter on weekends. It's charity." Marcus glanced at his notes, clearly uncomfortable. Company Policy Section 4.7 states that employees cannot hold outside employment without written approval from management. It's not employment. I don't receive compensation. The policy doesn't distinguish between paid and unpaid work. He slid a highlighted copy across the table. Any outside work commitment requires disclosure and approval. My hands curled into fists. Nobody told me that. And even if they had, this is helping abuse survivors. What kind of company punishes someone for charity? I understand your frustration, but policy is policy. Marcus closed the folder, ending the discussion. We'll need to proceed with disciplinary action. That's when I knew Gina had won. Back to the conference room. Back to that humiliating moment where my career ended in front of everyone. Gina's cold pronouncement. The security escort. The cardboard box filled with 3 years of my professional life. But something hardened inside me during that walk. The shock began transforming into something sharper, more focused. They'd made a mistake. Big one. They'd underestimated who they were dealing with. I wasn't just an account manager. I was someone who'd built client relationships through trust and transparency. Someone who documented everything meticulously. Someone who understood that in business, as in life, truth always had a way of surfacing. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and made a decision. I wouldn't disappear quietly. I wouldn't let Gina's narrative become the official story. I wouldn't allow them to destroy my reputation based on lies and assumptions. They wanted to play corporate politics. Fine. But they'd forgotten something crucial. I knew where all the bodies were buried. Because I'd been the one managing the clients they'd been lying to. The real game was about to begin. The first week was brutal. Bills arrived with their usual indifference to my employment status. Rent, car payment, insurance. My savings account balance dropped daily. Each transaction a reminder of how quickly stability could vanish. I applied to 17 jobs. I got 3 automated rejections and 14 silences. On day 9, a recruiter I'd worked with before returned my call. "Emily, I have to be honest with you," she said, her voice gentle with bad news. "I spoke to someone at Pinnacle about a reference. The feedback wasn't good." My throat tightened. "What did they say?" "That you'd been terminated for policy violations. That you were untrustworthy. That you'd been working for a competitor." He paused. "Is any of that true?" "No. None of it. I was volunteering at a women's shelter, and they twisted it into—" "I believe you," she interrupted. "But the damage is done. They're poisoning the well. Every company I approach is going to hear the same story." After we hung up, I paced my apartment, fury building with each step. Gina wasn't content with firing me. She was systematically destroying my ability to work anywhere in the industry. That's when I decided. If she wanted war, I'd give her war. But I'd fight smart. I spent 3 days taking inventory. Not of what I'd lost, but of what I still had. The answer surprised me. I had documentation. 3 years of emails, project files, and client communications. I'd saved everything meticulously, a habit from my first corporate job where a coworker had tried to steal credit for my work. I had relationships, clients who trusted me, coworkers who'd seen what Gina was doing, industry contacts who respected my work regardless of where my employment status said I belonged. I had knowledge, deep, detailed knowledge of Pinnacle's client operations. Every account I'd managed, every promise the company had made, every corner Gina had cut to make her numbers look better. And I had something Gina didn't. Nothing to lose. I created a spreadsheet, mapping out key clients, important dates, and potential allies. I backed up every document to 3 separate cloud services. I organized my evidence chronologically, building a timeline that told a very different story than the one Gina was selling. Then I started making calls. Carefully, strategically, one conversation at a time. The first call came from an unexpected source. Velocity Freight, Pinnacle's largest client, reached out through their CEO's executive assistant. "Ms. Parker, Mr. Thompson would like to speak with you about a consulting opportunity." Trevor Thompson had been my account from day 1 at Pinnacle. I'd helped Velocity Freight redesign their entire logistics workflow, saving them millions in shipping costs. We'd built genuine trust over 3 years of partnership. "I heard what happened," Trevor said when we connected. His voice carried the gruff warmth I remembered. "Pinnacle's version doesn't match the person I know. I wanted to hear your side." I explained everything. The volunteer work, the false accusations, the character assassination. Trevor listened without interrupting. "Here's my problem, Emily. Since you left, our service quality has dropped significantly. Response times are slower. Mistakes are increasing. Frankly, I don't trust whoever they've replaced you with. What are you proposing?" "Independent consulting work. You help us optimize our systems directly. We pay you properly, not whatever Pinnacle was giving you." He paused. "And you do it in a way that's completely above board so they can't touch you." I smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. "When do we start?" The consulting arrangement with Velocity gave me something precious. Access. Not to Pinnacle's internal systems, but to the client-facing results of Gina's management. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Gina had been cutting corners everywhere. Services Pinnacle promised were being delivered partially or not at all. Reports sent to clients contained inflated metrics that didn't match reality. Budget items clients paid for were being redirected elsewhere, with carefully crafted invoices hiding the truth. She wasn't just taking credit for my work. She was running a systematic operation of client deception to inflate her department's profitability. I documented everything methodically. Screenshots of discrepancies between promised services and actual delivery. Timeline comparisons showing when quality dropped. Budget analyses revealing where client money actually went versus where invoices claimed it went. Every piece of evidence was factual, verifiable, and damning. I never fabricated anything. I didn't need to. The truth was devastating enough. Trevor noticed me taking notes during one of our optimization sessions. You're building something, aren't you? Just staying organized, I replied. He smiled knowingly. Whatever you're planning, Emily, make it count. Carl reached out 2 weeks into my consulting work. We met at a coffee shop across town, far from Pinnacle's usual haunts. He looked over his shoulder before sitting down, like we were planning a heist instead of just talking. I quit, he said without preamble. Gave my notice yesterday. Because of what happened to me. Partly. But mainly because I couldn't watch Gina destroy what you built anymore. He pulled out his laptop. Before I left, I backed up some files. Things I thought you might want to see. The files contained email chains, budget reports, and meeting notes from the past 6 months. In them, I saw the full scope of Gina's operation. She'd been systematically cutting service quality to boost profit margins, then presenting those margins as evidence of her exceptional management. But more damaging were the emails where she explicitly lied to clients about service delivery, blamed delays on former staff incompetence, and redirected complaints away from her department. Why are you giving me this? Asked. Carl met my eyes. Because what she did to you was wrong. Because she's going to do it to someone else if nobody stops her. And because truth matters. I'm not the only one, am I? No. There's others. Amanda from last year. Brian from 2 years before that. Gina has a pattern. She finds talented people, uses them up, then discards them when they become threats. Amanda reached out after Kyle told her I was building a case. We met for lunch, and she brought her own folder of documentation. Gina accused me of stealing office supplies, Amanda said, her voice still bitter a year later. Can you believe that? I bought a ream of paper with petty cash for a client presentation, and she claimed I was embezzling. Made this huge thing about it with HR. What really happened? I just closed a major account that she wanted credit for. The CEO publicly thanked me at the quarterly meeting. Gina couldn't stand it. Amanda pushed her folder across the table. I kept everything. Emails, receipts, witness statements. I was going to sue, but my lawyer said corporate cases take years and cost more than I'd recover. I'm not looking to sue, I said. I'm looking for truth. Then you'll want this. She pulled out a printed email chain. This is Gina telling a client that delays in their shipment were caused by staff turnover and incompetence. The date is 2 weeks after you were fired. I read the email carefully. Gina had specifically blamed service failures on the departure of unreliable account managers who prioritized personal interests over client needs. She was using my firing to excuse her own failures. Amanda smiled grimly. Now you see why I kept everything. The cracks started showing at Pinnacle 2 months after my termination. Trevor at Velocity Freight began asking pointed questions about service discrepancies. Other clients I'd managed started noticing similar problems and reaching out to their contacts. Gina's response was predictable. Blame everyone else. According to the Whisper Network still feeding me information, she'd spent an entire management meeting explaining how previous account management created unrealistic client expectations that the company was now struggling to meet. She blamed me for her failures. But she'd made a crucial mistake. The clients knew me. They trusted me. And when they started comparing notes, the pattern became obvious. Trevor called me during my 3rd month of consulting. Emily, I need to ask you something directly. Are the problems we're experiencing unique to us? Or is this happening across Pinnacle's client base? What makes you ask? I had lunch with James Delgado from Pacific Imports. They're experiencing identical issues. Missed deadlines, budget irregularities, service gaps. And when they complain, Gina tells them it's because their previous account manager, quote, established unsustainable service levels. That account manager was me, I said quietly. Exactly. So either you massively overpromised and underdelivered for 3 years across multiple clients, or someone's lying about current capabilities. Which is it? I could hear the trap in his question. The opening he was giving me. I never promised anything I couldn't deliver, Trevor. Everything I committed to was within standard operational parameters. That's what I thought. Which means Gina's lying about why service has degraded. I have documentation if you want to see it. There was a long pause. Yes, I do. Brian Crawford, the CEO, started asking questions. According to Kyle, who'd maintained friendships inside Pinnacle despite leaving, Brian had noticed the client satisfaction scores dropping. More concerning were the cancellation notices starting to arrive. 3 major clients had ended their contracts in 2 months. That was unprecedented for Pinnacle. Brian demanded explanations. Gina blamed market conditions. She blamed increased competition. She blamed the economy. She blamed everything except her own management failures. But Brian hadn't built a successful company by accepting excuses. He started digging deeper, requesting detailed reports, comparing current performance to historical data, talking directly to clients instead of relying on Gina's summaries. Through my consulting work with Velocity, I'd become a ghost haunting Pinnacle's operations. I never directly undermined them. I never badmouthed the company. I simply did exceptional work for their former clients, work that highlighted by contrast how far service quality had fallen. Trevor mentioned during one of our sessions that Brian had called him personally to discuss Velocity's decision to bring in outside consultants. What did you tell him? He asked. The truth. That we needed someone we could trust. Someone who actually understood our needs. Someone like the account managers Pinnacle used to have. Trevor smiled. I might have mentioned your name. The internal memo surfaced on a Friday afternoon. Someone forwarded it to Amanda, who forwarded it to me. The subject line read, Q2 client service targets, revised expectations. It was from Gina, sent 3 months earlier, outlining her strategy to optimize profitability through strategic service adjustments. In corporate speak, she was documenting her plan to cut corners and hope nobody noticed. The memo directly contradicted reports she'd sent to Brian claiming that service quality remained unchanged. She'd told leadership one thing while instructing her team to do another. This is it, Amanda said over the phone. This is proof she was lying to everyone. How did this leak? Kyle says it was posted anonymously to the company's Slack. Someone on Gina's team must have had enough. Amanda paused. Emily, people are finally seeing what she really is. The memo spread through Pinnacle like wildfire. By Monday morning, according to my sources, Brian had called an emergency executive meeting. Gina's carefully constructed narrative was crumbling, one leaked document at a time. I hadn't posted the memo. I hadn't needed to. The truth had defenders inside Pinnacle, people Gina had mistreated or ignored, people who'd been waiting for the right moment to speak up. That moment had arrived. Trevor called with news that changed everything. Velocity's board has authorized an independent audit of our partnership with Pinnacle. We're bringing in outside consultants to review service delivery, budget allocation, and performance metrics over the past year. That's significant. Emily, they want you on the audit team. You know our account better than anyone, and frankly, you're one of the few people we trust to be honest about what's happening. I hesitated. Participating in an audit of my former employer felt like crossing a line. But then I thought about the clients being deceived, the money being misallocated, the lies being told in my name. I'll do it, I said. But everything needs to be by the book. Fully documented. Completely transparent. That's exactly what we want. Truth, not revenge. The audit took 3 weeks. Every document I'd collected, every discrepancy I'd noticed, every pattern I'd identified was verified by independent analysts. They found everything I'd found, plus additional issues I'd missed. Budget items paid for but never delivered. Service level agreements violated repeatedly. Client complaints systematically suppressed or ignored. The financial impact ran into hundreds of thousands of dollars across just one account. If Velocity's experience was typical, Pinnacle's entire client base had been systematically deceived for months. The suspension notice arrived at Gina's desk on a Tuesday morning. According to Kyle, who heard it from someone still inside, she'd walked into her office to find Marcus from HR waiting with security. "We need your keycard, laptop and phone," Marcus said, his voice professionally neutral. "You're suspended pending investigation into client service irregularities and budget discrepancies." Gina's face went white. "This is ridiculous. What investigation?" Velocity Freight has filed a formal complaint supported by extensive documentation. Their audit revealed significant discrepancies between promised services and actual delivery. "The board has authorized a full review of all your accounts." She tried arguing. She tried calling Brian directly. She tried claiming the evidence was fabricated. None of it worked. The same HR department that had fired me without investigation was now, finally, doing their job. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Kyle texted me the details. "Marcus literally used your termination as a reference point. Asked why they investigated your volunteer work so thoroughly but never checked her client management practices. Gina was escorted from the building the same way I had been. Cardboard box. Security guard. Every eye in the office watching. The walk of shame she'd orchestrated for me became her own final exit. Brian called me directly 3 days after Gina's suspension. His voice carried genuine remorse and something I hadn't expected. Respect. "Emily, I owe you an apology. A significant one. We handled your situation horribly." He paused. "Actually, horribly doesn't cover it. We failed you completely. Thank you for saying that. I've spent the past week reviewing everything. Your documentation, the audit findings, testimonials from clients you worked with. The picture that emerges is damning, and not for you." He sighed heavily. "Gina manipulated all of us. She exploited my trust, weaponized HR policies, and turned your charity work into a termination offense while she was systematically defrauding our clients. I appreciate you looking into it. We're restructuring the entire account management department. New leadership, new oversight, new policies to prevent this from happening again." He hesitated. "We'd like you to come back. Head of Client Services. Full executive compensation. Quiddy. Whatever it takes." I was silent for a long moment. The offer was generous. Vindication felt good. But something had shifted during my months away. "I appreciate the offer, Brian, but I'm going to decline." "Emily, I've started my own consulting firm. I'm building something different. Something based on transparency and trust, not corporate politics." There was a long pause. "Then let me be your first client. Pinnacle needs someone to rebuild what Gina destroyed. Help us do it right." The news spread quickly. Emily Parker vindicated. Gina Thompson terminated. Pinnacle Logistics undergoing major restructuring. My phone exploded with messages from former colleagues, industry contacts, and clients I'd worked with over the years. Amanda sent flowers with a card. "Justice tastes sweet." Kyle sent a gif of someone dropping a microphone. Trevor sent a consulting contract worth 6 figures. Most meaningful was the message from Patricia at Hope Haven. "We heard what happened. Your fight inspired 3 of our residents to stand up to their former employers about harassment. You showed them that speaking truth to power is possible. That's what made everything worthwhile. Not revenge. Not vindication. The knowledge that refusing to disappear quietly had mattered." Gina had disappeared from LinkedIn. Her profile deleted overnight. According to industry gossip, no company would touch her after the audit revelations. She'd built her career on manipulation and theft, and eventually the foundation collapsed. I felt no joy in her downfall, only relief that she couldn't hurt anyone else the way she'd hurt me, Amanda, and countless others. My consulting firm, Parker Integrity Solutions, launched officially with 5 clients and a simple mission statement: truth in business, trust in relationships, excellence in execution. 6 months after my firing, I stood in my new office, looking out at the city skyline. The space wasn't large, but it was mine. My name on the door. My rules. My values. The sign on my desk read Parker Integrity Solutions, where truth matters. Cheesy, maybe. But after everything I'd been through, I'd earned the right to be a little cheesy about my principles. My phone buzzed with a message from Natalie. Hope Haven board meeting tonight. Patricia wants to thank you properly for everything you've done. Please come. I smiled, typing back a quick confirmation. The volunteer work that had supposedly cost me my career had actually revealed what my career should be. Helping others, building trust, doing work that mattered. They'd thought firing me would end my story. That I'd slink away defeated, another casualty of corporate politics. They'd underestimated who they were dealing with. Because they'd forgotten something crucial. The truth doesn't disappear just because you try to bury it. Eventually it surfaces. And when it does, everyone sees exactly who was lying. I didn't destroy Gina. She destroyed herself. I just refused to let her destroy me too. The best revenge wasn't getting even. It was building something better than what I'd lost. It was proving that integrity wasn't weakness, that truth wasn't naive, that doing the right thing wasn't just idealistic nonsense. It was the foundation of everything worth building. I glanced at the photo on my desk. Me and the women from Hope Haven at our last fundraiser. All of us smiling, all of us proof that second chances were real. They'd fired me for working 2 jobs. They just never bothered to check which 2 jobs I actually had. Their loss became my liberation. Their ending became my beginning. And I wouldn't change a single thing.